All politics is identity politics. Welcome to Identity Politics, everyone. I'm Kevin DeAnna. Just got back from some extensive travel, which I think is going to pay dividends in the months ahead. Excited to talk about that to those of you who support the program because we are getting close to some expansion. But before we do any of that, we have to talk about the state of the country right now. For one thing, do we even have a country? People toss around these terms like America First or a republic, not an empire, or the old republic or any of this stuff, and we have to ask ourselves, what does any of this mean? When we say Americans, who exactly are we referring to? Perhaps more importantly, who even considers themselves an American at this point? Now, for reasons we obviously don't need to go into, American at this point has basically just become a brand name, a word that means everything and nothing. There are elected officials, whole institutions, entire cities practically, that just aren't part of the country in any real sense. Not just that they aren't loyal to the country, but they aren't even expected to be loyal to the country or identify with the country, even rhetorically. And yet, at the same time, America is in some ways stronger than ever. As a state, as a polity, it has completely outperformed Europe over the last few decades. Militarily and economically, it remains supreme. It has a commanding lead in AI and space technology, which ensures that we're going to remain dominant for another century as long as the political system doesn't rot it from within. And yet, the American nation, and as Sam Hyde said, we all know what an American is and what an American is not. The American nation is still there. It's still vital. In some ways, it's even recovering. But we're basically an underground in our own country, in the only country we have. All the dominant institutions, what I call the people who matter, and let's be honest, the people who matter are not us. The people who run the universities, the media, the major NGOs, the foundations that fund everything, the government bureaucracies, the people who run the political machines in the major cities. In short, everyone who is getting money from you, whether you like them or not, and is able to subsidize their lifestyle through your efforts and dictate how the class system works in this country. Those people hate the country itself. What we might call the anti-American narrative, that this is an illegitimate racist country on stolen land that needs to be deconstructed. That is precisely what you get from the dominant institutions. That's the contradiction that we're all living in. I mean, consider this bizarre situation. Take a step back. The American nation, which is to say, the white population in this country that sees America as its only country and our true homeland, our only homeland. We're numerous, we're wealthy, relatively speaking, we're powerful, we're prideful, we're armed to the teeth, and yet somehow we're not sovereign, even within our own political system. We lack all collective representation. We're not even equal within our own political system. It's an active disadvantage to be white in the United States of America in a legal sense, in an institutional sense. And yet at the same time, the American empire, if we can call it that, can enforce its will all over the globe. The only real obstacles to its power are forces within this country itself. But those forces apparently are something you're not allowed to do anything about. So the president can kidnap the president of Venezuela, make its oil available to the United States, totally change the political system in that country overnight. It's not a problem. It's not even an issue. Nobody even has to vote on it. And yet at the same time, if a city refuses to enforce immigration law because it openly prefers to be filled with foreigners, you're just not allowed to do anything about it. I mean, there's a big case that we're going to talk about in a second, which I think exemplifies this whole thing. You can have a judge rule that national monuments have to condemn the country itself and continue to be funded by you. This is the situation we're in. Now, in a real country, in a real empire, hell, in the tiniest little sovereign state anywhere, if you have taxpayer-supported monuments, the whole point is to make people feel good about being a part of the country. That's why you do it. What's the point of having a country? Why bother with any of this? Why do any of this shit? It's because if you have a country, you can do more if you feel like you're the end product of a long tradition, that you aren't just self-created, that you benefit from the sacrifices of your ancestors and the victories of the past, that you aren't just leading a pointless life of consumption. You're part of a larger story. Your descendants will be part of the same people, and they will go on to accomplish even greater things. Why? Because you're part of a great effort that transcends generations and even death itself. That's what it means to have a country. And if you're under 40, that's what was taken from you on purpose. If you're white, of course. If you're non-white, the obvious importance of identity is taken utterly for granted. Now, in America, there are many great things that our people have done, but you aren't allowed to say that they're great things. You have to quite literally turn these accomplishments into monuments of shame. Am I exaggerating? Well, this from Yahoo News just the other day. Judge says Trump can't use a whiteout pen on park history, orders signs restored. Ahead of Independence Day, a federal judge has told the Trump administration to put back national park signs removed under an executive order that singled out references to climate change, slavery, indigenous history, and LGBTQ plus stories. The ruling comes just ahead of the 4th of July and could restore missing context at some of the country's most significant historic sites, according to AOL. On Friday, U.S. District Judge Angel Kelly issued a preliminary injunction directing the administration to replace, before Independence Day, any park language that had been taken down under the order. The case was brought by a coalition of conservation and history groups who said the policy was removing scientific information and difficult but necessary parts of American history. Trump signed the executive order in March 2025, saying that certain national park language was part of a concerted and widespread effort to rewrite our nation's history because it presented the country's founding principles and historical milestones in a negative light, unquote. And who can possibly disagree with the president on that? It's not scientific history that we're talking about here. Does anyone truly believe that what America is about is LGBTQ stories or indigenous history? You know, the people who were referred to in the Declaration of Independence as the merciless Indian savages, or all the other nons who wouldn't even be eligible to come to this country under the regime that it was founded under. No. But the point is, someone is going to impose an official ideology that defines the political order. Every single country has a state church. There's always a state church. There's no such thing as an open society. It's just a question of who gets to define orthodoxy and heresy. Now, here's the judge. Obviously, you already know this. Joe Biden appointee, formerly worked at the Legal Aid Society, which basically means that the guy who stabbed you is going to get a lawyer and you won't. Mixed Black and Asian heritage, I think. Like, you already know every opinion she's ever had. Ever could have, ever could even imagine. There's no mystery about any of this at this point. I don't know why they even bother with the hearings. That's why she's on the bench. And obviously, what she stands to gain is all comes from a system where every government-backed institution in the country says white people are the problem. And it just berates us and says it's our job and our role to give people like her more money and power. It's a kind of secular theocracy. It's moral shaming. There is no legal doctrine at stake here. I mean, come on. No one at all actually seriously believes the executive branch does not have the authority to run the National Park Service, and that actually a random affirmative action judge has the unlimited power to dictate the ideological content of national monuments. It's an insane thing to believe from a legal perspective, but the law's not real. Identity is real. Power comes from identity and moral willpower. So, of course, the way the system actually works is you have someone who really shouldn't even be in the country making speeches from the bench to commemorate her own courage and ordering the rest of us to pay tribute. And, of course, the media is echoing this. An excerpt from a Daily Beast article entitled, "Judge Brutally Slaps Down Trump's Bid to Rewrite History at National Parks." Quote, and this is the judge, "History cannot be faithfully told while excluding the experiences of communities whose contributions, struggles, and achievements form an important part of our nation's history," she said. "Indeed, at a time of facts and alternative facts, the only thing we must be able to rely on as undeniable truth is history. And telling the full truths of our shared story helps our nation heal from past wrongs rather than prolonging it." There's that word again. Communities. The very existence of these communities negates the possibilities of our nation's story, or even an us. Heal from past wrongs rather than prolonging us. There is no us. No one wants to heal from past wrongs, because if there was healing, none of these people would have any power. That's why these efforts exist, to incite hatred against a white majority population. Has any apology for slavery or Indian removal made these things go away? When the Pope sniveled and groveled for the Crusades, did everyone go, oh, okay, we're done with that? In Germany, when the entire state apparatus is devoted to obsessing over the Holocaust and berating its own people? Has that led to people going, oh, okay, it's over now. We can't pick on the Germans anymore. They don't have to pay any more money. No, of course not. It makes it worse. Does anyone believe that reparations would lead to anything other than demands for more money? That reparations would just pave the way for more reparations? Of course not. Everyone knows where this is going. If apologies or reparations or tributes to marginalized communities led to unity or getting past certain issues, there wouldn't be those demands in the first place. The point is to keep the racial grift going. And keeping the racial grift going, that is fundamentally how the American system works. Forget signs at national parks, multiply this to everything. Our leaders invoke the language of unity, but there is no unity. Even our side, when we say our country, America first, our people as opposed to foreigners, who does that include? There is no common interest. In fact, the people who have interests that are directly opposed to your interests, the people who have the most potential to make your life worse, the people who are, by their very inherent nature, enemies in a political sense, in the idea that every gain for you is a loss for them, and every gain for them is a loss for you, they're all in this country already. They're your fellow Americans. It's not Russia or China that's the main problem. It's not even people in a different section of the country that's the problem. It's the people who might live right next to you, who have your passport, but not your identity. It's the people who see America as just a government and a weapon they can use against you, not as their country. And to bring in race for a second, sure, it might offend someone out there's sense of civic patriotism if I say, I have more common interests with an Italian or a Portuguese or a Norwegian whose language I don't even speak than I do with a Black American whose family has been here for 400 years. But that's true. And they know that too. So where does that leave us with this term American? To continue with what this judge said, this also from the Daily Beast article, the beauty of history is the unvarnished storytelling of a time gone by. Give me a break. And the delivery of undeniable truths. The government's stewardship of these park sites thus carries a responsibility to present history in full, rather than in favored fragments. Unfortunately, the government has disregarded these principles. Under the guise of promoting American dignity, this administration seeks to share a limited history by ordering the removal of all signs, displays, and interpretive exhibits at national parks that do not align with its preferred narrative, thereby telling half-truths. Then a little later, we are told, history cannot be faithfully told while excluding the experiences of communities whose contributions, struggles, and achievements form an important part of our nation's story. Indeed, at a time of facts and alternative facts, the only thing we must be able to rely on as undeniable truth is history, and telling the full truths of our shared history helps our nation heal from past wrongs rather than prolonging us. That was the quote from before. Now, cut past all this maudlin, syrupy, sweet therapy talk. This is why I emphasize it. This is supposed to be a judge. This is not the assistant HR director having a psychological breakdown because you said Merry Christmas instead of Happy Holidays or something. This is supposed to be a judge. What's really being said here? Certain communities get their stories told. Other communities do not. Which one do you think you are in? The only community that actually defines the country, that is indispensable to the country, that is the country when all is said and done, are whites. And we don't get our story told. Because here's the indisputable fact that's at the root of all our problems. And if this country goes down, it'll be because of this brutal truth. You cannot reconcile the histories of different peoples into one unified narrative. Can't do it, guys. The triumphs of the white American nation, and until very recently, all Americans considered America a white nation and defined it as such, including the founders. Our triumphs are the defeats of other peoples. The conquest of the West was the defeat of the Indians. That's what it was. The victory in the Mexican-American War was the defeat of the Mexicans. That's what it was. The civilization created in North America was a creation of Europeans, not Africans. That's what it was. That's what it is. And it ceases to exist when Europeans are not in control. This is the full truth of this shared story that people can't accept. So if you can't say that, if you're not allowed to say that, What do you fall back on? The only other narrative you can possibly have about American history is that actually only white people are not included in American history. Really, America has to be defined as overcoming itself, unmaking itself, returning to the primordial slime that is the third world way of being. I mean, that's what they're going with. If I was a Maoist, right, I'd call this an antagonistic contradiction. It's when you have a conflict within society that cannot be reconciled, but at some point, someone has to win, someone has to lose. You don't get to just opt out of it. There's not a way you can just make this happen through one shared story. It's like Lee Jackson, Martin Luther King Day in Virginia. It doesn't work. It makes no sense. You can't take the histories of peoples that are fundamentally at odds and come up with some national narrative that claims they're all on the same side. It'd be like saying Happy Israel-Palestine Day. See how that goes over. It's not going to work. It's going to be one or the other. And yeah, you can paper over it. You can have a government that pretends you're all living under the same thing. I mean, remember, for a little while, not that long ago, there was even a country called Rhodesia, Zimbabwe. But that's just like the in-between state. Fundamentally, some group is going to have the power, someone else won't. Someone will rule, someone will be ruled. Those who tell you otherwise are lying. And morality and historical narratives are the tools that are used to justify the use of power. The rest is propaganda, and you're a fool if you fall for it. When you hear stuff like, oh, you need to participate in our shared story, what they're really saying and what you should really hear is, pay up, Whitey. So, this is the undercurrent with everything that's going on with the 250th anniversary of our country. And what's really about the root of this controversy with these national park signs. Obviously, if Kamala Harris had won, it would be obese black trans dancers twerking on the White House or something. But the point is, whatever she would have come up with, the celebration would have been a condemnation of the country's existence. America is the scene of a crime, as Harris said. That is still what it's going to be in most major cities. That's still what it's going to be for most institutions the left controls. That's still what it's going to be for universities and media outlets. A lot of places are even canceling their 4th of July celebrations because they can't even go through the motions. They can't even fake it. Now consider President Donald J. Trump. So, my friend Paul Kersey, who I do the View from the Right podcast with, he always says President Trump is not the guy, but he's going to be the guy who's going to set up the guy. He may be more optimistic than me. What I would say is that President Trump reveals the nature of what we live under more than anyone else, because he just says stuff that other people remain silent about. We overlook it a lot. We forget what it was like before him. He rhetorically and in spirit points the way forward. Strong executive leadership, clean up the cities, literally clean up the city in Washington, D.C.'s case, lean into the idea of American empire, get the illegals out, define America as only being the possession of a certain people. Does he follow through? No. Does he point the way? Yes. So, for example, this is the kind of thing we just shrug at now. But 10 years ago, we'd be going nuts. Donald J. Trump posts the following. Sadly, if you import people from third world countries, you quickly become a third world country. And there's not a thing you can do about it. Make America great again, President Donald J. Trump. This is everything great and everything bad at once. He is right. Demographics are destiny. 10 years ago, you would have had the leadership of the Republican Party celebrating this demographic change. They would have condemned this kind of statement. The president is saying it now. That's not nothing. The logical conclusion of this statement, again, from the president of the United States, is that we shouldn't have the third world in this country. America should be a white country, as it historically was. Great. But does he know that India is part of the third world? Has anybody told him? Can anybody tell him? And what do you mean you can't do anything about it? Isn't that what remigration is about? And come to think of it, isn't Africa part of the third world too? And so what are we doing with all these blacks here? Do they have to stay? Now, I'm not insane. I don't expect the president to just say stuff like this or be a white nationalist or whatever he is. But here's my point. I don't think he's really thought through what he's saying, because how could he? And it's not because he's stupid or something. Whatever his faults, I promise you President Trump is probably smarter than most of us, certainly smarter than all his critics in the media, but he is boomer all too boomer. I mean, how does one think in absolute racial terms when you grow up and spend your adult life in a country where the demographic issues weren't so severe that the whole thing didn't threaten to come apart, where it still worked, at least in some sense? So you just don't think about it. I mean, it's just us here, right, guys? Like, let's admit some things. We are the exceptions. Can we admit that to each other? Like we're autistically thinking through the logical conclusions of demographic change and the ideological narratives used to justify that change and the problems within it. You understand, like, we're being weird here, right? That's a weird thing to do. We understand that about ourselves and each other. Most people do not think systematically. And when it comes to practical politics, that's probably an advantage. How do most people operate? Based on vibes, on feelings, on an overall thrust of an idea, not really thinking about it. And the overall idea shared by President Donald Trump and most white Americans, if we're being honest about who our people are and not what they want them to be, is that there is this normative white American identity, but these other people are just kind of included in it. As long as there aren't too many, and we don't really think about it too much, and this normative white America, it's good if it's powerful and proud and kicks ass. And it's this kind of half-assed, not really too thought out ideology. That's basically what America is. That's basically what American patriotism is. Which, of course, brings us to this. So, this, of course, was the Freedom 250 event at the White House, which was a big UFC event, which UFC paid for, by the way, to the tune of something like $60 million. Now, there is something very Lindy about the idea of gladiators being brought in to fight before the emperor to commemorate the empire's 250th anniversary. They even brought the Pope's brother in there to enjoy the combat, which is the kind of thing that Frederick II of Hohenstaufen would do or something. Yes, I get it. Sure, it's lowbrow. Bread and circuses. But oh, you don't like that? Okay, then get rid of democracy. Anyone have a plan for how to do that? Anyone have a plan to not have the masses in politics? Oh, you want the masses in politics? Oh, you believe in sovereignty of the people? Guess what? You're going to have to do things that ordinary people, especially young men, are going to find inspiring and cool. Sorry. You're going to have things like fighters festooned in your national flag staring at the founding document before walking out to fight and win. Come at me if you want, but I say this is, in fact, a good thing. Oh, it's lowbrow. What do you want? I'm American. Oh, he was wearing a shirt about a crypto company. Yeah, sorry, fine. If you want government-funded gladiator fights, yeah, I do too. Let's do that. Oh, we can't? All right, well, this is what you get. And let us not forget, when we talk about high culture, what is that at this point? I mean, the crowned heads of Europe go from event to event being berated by various Browns. The universities are obsessed with bizarre sexual fetishes and racial revisionism. Almost nobody goes to art museums to look at anything made in the last century. And our leading entertainment institutions have been operating based off a stuck culture for 20 years. Like, I fully concede that Evelo was right about us Americans, that there's something lowbrow and sloppy-list about all this. Sure, fine. But I mean this seriously. What is the highbrow alternative? I encourage you guys to pick up the book When Race Trumps Merit, How the Pursuit of Equity Sacrifices Excellence, Destroys Beauty, and Threatens Life. It's from Heather McDonald. And she discusses not just things like, say, medicine, affirmative action in medicine or something, but classical music orchestras, art museums, universities, the very things that we use when we talk about high culture. These things are being deliberately deconstructed by people who hate these institutions. The people we expect to guard our high culture are dismantling it on purpose. So even if you believe in the theory of elite human capital, that the people who work at these sorts of places are generally smarter in terms of raw IQ than the people watching UFC, and that is very questionable at this point, given how many unqualified minorities are just being handed these positions, they are still trying to tear these places down. So if you say something like, oh, we need a highbrow alternative, there is none. The people whose job it was to preserve it decided to destroy it in the name of racial equity. And if you say, oh, I'm an elite cosmopolitan, I believe in highbrow European culture, not this vulgar American display, fine. You're still not getting a job at these places unless you decide to castrate yourself or pretend to be an Aborigine. That's the fact. Now, am I exaggerating? Well, the Democrats had their own little rival event. So you have all the celebrities. You have Robert De Niro trying to be all tough, like he's one of his characters instead of just some retarded actor. You have Jane Fonda, who for some reason wasn't tried for treason 50 years ago, to our national shame. You have all the great and the good and the people we're supposed to take seriously. This is the culture elite. The conservatives don't know how to do art. They don't know how to create anything. They don't know how to do culture. Okay, here are the artists. Here's the best. What do they come up with? This.
No one is getting left behind this time. No one is getting left behind. Not this time. No one is getting left behind this time. How do we get there? Together or never get there at all.
That's the best. That's what they came up with. You remember the Super Bowl when Turning Point USA did the alternative halftime show with Kid Rock and we all rolled our eyes and everybody said, like, this is pathetic? That was a lot better than this. And it's not exactly close. Now, there was something else going on recently. There was a kind of post-American celebration that wasn't cringe. In fact, I find it kind of ominous. It wasn't just decrepit shitlibs who still think they're fighting Richard Nixon. This, of course, was the celebration in New York City after the Knicks won the NBA championship, and it included scenes like this. It's crazy to think that I'm from North Jersey, and there was a time when I thought of New York City as my city and cared so much about it. Might as well be Nairobi at this point. There's plenty more where that came from, and why would anybody be surprised? I mean, it's not stopping reporters from celebrating it, of course. Like, oh, this is this wonderful multiracial city that Mandami has given us. Look at this united celebration. Well, yeah, this is what it's like on the ground. It's just third worlders beating the crap out of each other. The New York Post tells us 63 people arrested, 4 stabbings, and 1 shooting. Reported in NYC as Knicks fans go wild celebrating NBA Finals win. Quote, the Big Apple erupted in bloody chaos overnight as rowdy mobs celebrating the Knicks NBA title trashed NYPD cars and torched FIFA buses in Times Square, leaving 10 cops hurt, 63 people in handcuffs. At least 15 suspects were hit with criminal charges, while a 17-year-old boy also was shot in the foot, and 4 people were stabbed during the mayhem, the NYPD said. Little later, we are told, charges against the out-of-control revelers included an assault on a police officer by a 28-year-old man from Arlington, Texas, criminal possession of a weapon, criminal mischief, disorderly conduct, resisting arrest, and obstruction of governmental administration, police said. Shocking video footage showed the Times Square crowd descending on the yellow school buses reserved to take soccer fans to FIFA World Cup games at MetLife Stadium in New Jersey, ripping them apart and completely torching one. Hooligans also took bats to NYPD vehicles, lit fireworks in the middle of the massive crowds, and blocked traffic on several roads while several fights broke out. The 17-year-old who was shot in his left foot at West 42nd Street and Broadway told cops he was riding a city bike when injured, law enforcement sources said. The teen was not being cooperative with investigators, they said. Quote, and I think that little detail tells us who this teen really is. Of course, these celebrations, if you can call them that, do have political consequences, and they're not negative ones. Mandami is getting a real political boost from this. And all the crime, including buses being lit on fire and guys getting stomped on the street and people getting mobbed on the subways, nobody cares about this. This is just how it is. This video from Nick Sotor. Now, here's the takeaway. We cannot paper over our demographic decline and the fact that entire areas of the country have essentially been lost with spectacle and with gladiator fights. And yet we have to ask ourselves, what alternative is there? Certainly for President Trump, or really the better members of his generation, any other alternative is quite literally unthinkable. And if we look at what we might call the 1960s left that is still bitterly clinging on to life, it's exhausted culturally, if not quite politically. I mean, these people still vote and donate. But what's coming next, to paint with the broadest brush, is basically New York City. This kind of multiracial, post-American, anti-white movement that we very flippantly call gay race communism is probably going to be ascendant. Hassan Piker, whatever else one thinks of him, is probably onto something when he was discussing this with some up-and-coming non-white Democrats.
Like, there was a time when the Democratic Party was the dominant force in this country, and the Republicans were the ones who had to capitulate to like the post-New Deal era Democratic legislation. That obviously changed after Reagan, and I think there is a real opportunity here to flip it back, where it is the Republicans that are constantly on a defensive posture, where they have to sit there and be like, no, you don't understand. We do also want Medicare for all, but just maybe with a little bit of racism. But instead of like 100% racism, now they're like, okay, we'll do like 30% racism.
Now here's the thing. None of these people are American. They know this. We know this. They know we know this. None of them think they're American. Ultimately, all these people need to go, but that's not my point here. They are offering people something. They are offering white people something, even if it's a garbage program. If this is all desperate people can choose, this is what they will take. Now, I fundamentally think Trump is on to something with the optics. I think America's 250th anniversary is going to have to rely on more lowbrow, chud-coded, red America type stuff, because that's the only America left. Insofar as liberal whites believe in it at all, they maintain their position by using nons as a political weapon against their perceived social inferiors among whites, and even that is not going to last for very long. In the new non-white Democratic majority, old white boomers, old white shitlibs, even Jewish shitlibs are not going to be regarded as allies. They're just going to be regarded as cowardly white oppressors. So who do you have? If you're on the right, who do you have? You've got the white masses, especially the working class. That's your constituency. What are you going to give them? Now, look, people talk, bread and circuses. I don't think it's wrong to provide circuses. I don't think it's wrong to tell them that America is theirs. It is theirs, but it can't just be circuses. You also got to provide bread. The biggest failure of the Trump era was failing to win these people over as clients in a system of economic and political patronage. And now there is a very real danger that if they're not quite won over to the left, at least they're going to stay home. And then that's it. Because that's the last significant force holding back America's plunge into the third world. And don't call me paranoid, because the President of the United States just told us this is a real possibility. Like, we have a mass base. It's there. We have enough people red-pilled. They're there. We have a program. It's all there. What we don't have is organization or people willing to follow through. Because for 60 years, conservatives, and sadly, Trump is more of a conservative than he is a nationalist. As much as I think we owe him, as great as I think he's been, fundamentally, he is still a conservative, and conservatives have relied on rhetorical patriotism and symbolism rather than concrete benefits when it comes to the white working class. The one group that gets nothing out of the system is the one group holding it up. Young white men who get nothing out of the system are denied leadership precisely because they are the one group that could save this whole thing. And Trump hasn't changed that. He hasn't done nothing, but President Trump hasn't done enough. And spectacle is not going to cover that up. I do think America is going to be reorganized. We are going to enter our imperial era. The system can't go on like this. But there's no guarantee it's going to be based or epic or the kind of thing we want. It may be much worse. It could very easily just be a kind of authoritarian, anti-white, redistributionist regime that is in power forever because of demographics, and we just get endless decline. Think of South Africa. That could be the American empire. And that's what we have to avoid. The American nation, by which I mean white people, by which I mean you, white guys watching this, who, whatever we think about it, are stuck with America as the only homeland we have. We have a nation. We are the American nation, but we need to conquer the American state. We need to conquer the coming American empire. And once we do that, we can begin to reverse the demographic decline underway. Time is running out. Our back is against the wall. The situation is desperate, but it is not hopeless. We have a mass base. We have people ready for action. We just need leaders who are willing to work. And frankly, with this audience, I think some of you are among them. Hey guys, quick reminder before we continue. You can follow Identity Politics on Rumble, Odyssey, YouTube, X, and TikTok. And if you want to make sure you never miss an episode, sign up for our email list. If you believe in this work and you want to help us stay fully independent, you can support us directly on Ko-Fi. We offer bronze, silver, gold, and white membership tiers, or you can give a one-time contribution, whatever works for you. Every bit of support helps fund production, research, and our ability to speak freely without corporate or platform pressure. All the links are in the description below. Now back to the show. Congressman Steve Stockman was actually my first boss in politics, so this is a lot of fun for me. He served in Congress from 1995 to 1997, and then again from 2013 to 2015, returning in triumph after a 16-year absence. He ran for the Senate in 2014, but lost to Senator John Cornyn. Of course, Senator Cornyn himself is now on the way out. Big change in the Texas GOP. So there's a lot going on here, and I can think of no one better to discuss that change than Congressman Steve Stockman. Check it out. Congressman Steve Stockman, my very first boss in politics. A real pleasure to have you on Identity Politics. Thank you so much, sir.
Thank you for helping me get this arranged. I look like Leia in Star Wars with this headset on. Thank you for having me on.
Of course. So obviously you've had a very long history with the Texas GOP, and the main power broker, it seems, for a very long time was Senator John Cornyn, somebody you had a colorful past with because you ran against him, and he basically took action against you. But now he's out. And there seems to be a larger shift in the Texas GOP where they're just not putting up with the old network that has for so long refused to get anything done. Is this actually a big deal, or was his time just up? Or do you think like the Texas GOP is actually starting to get serious?
Well, a lot of times people always say that was before my time. As you know, I wrote the first crypto bill 14 years ago, and I was accused of being part of an international drug scheme and all that. So, but the bottom line is this: John Cornyn was horrible, and he tried to hide it. And I think finally it got through to the masses just how bad he was. And but I recognized it early because a lot of times he tried to hide it. And then Karl Rove was very involved in actually calling him more conservative than me, which was laughable. Oh, and but I think it's a fundamental change. The thing I'm worried about, people kind of dismiss, is that we had through Texas, as much as we try to block all the immigration, a lot of them end up staying here. I know this because in Houston now we have a lot of new illegal immigrants, and they're going to vote. Excuse me, a lot of them are going to vote. And there's nothing we can do about it. I mean, there is, but we don't have the will to do something about it. And
do you think?
And it's really alarming. I'm sorry.
No. You bring up an important point. I mean, the state GOP, obviously, this is something where we were basically told, like, look, this is something where we have been mobilizing on the immigration issue for a very long time nationally. And Greg Abbott was going to do something about the immigration issue. And he had that big standoff with the federal government and everything else. But then nothing came of it. And I mean, the last time I was just in Dallas, I mean, the city has been completely demographically transformed. At a certain point, how does the state GOP not know that it's going to be extinct just because of demographic changes, if nothing else?
Well, it's no longer replacement theory. It's replacement reality. And I don't know how, I don't know how long it's going to take for them to realize that this is happening. And once again, like I saw it years ago. In fact, I wrote a letter, unfortunately, to Obama saying, hey, you're dumping these people in my district that are, from the Middle East. And, it's not proper. Of course, he never responded. But I actually went over to the new mosque they just built. And now it's a huge mosque. Even more have come in. And a lot of the immigration was real frustrating for me to watch. The people that are most sympathetic to conservatives and Republicans are Cubans, anybody that lived in a social country, Cuban, Nicaraguans, Venezuelans, all those people, a lot of them, at least the first ones came through, are really anti-communist. Yet that's the one that under Trump's first initial people that they kicked out. I said, no, We have Chinese that are adult age, military age, and we have also countries who absolutely hate us. You're not kicking those out first. It didn't make sense. And now we have a real problem in Texas, and I almost predict that we may lose 3 seats in Texas Congress. I'm really worried about it, to tell you the truth.
Do you think Tallarico has a real chance to win the Senate race?
100%.
Why do you think the Republicans are? Why do you think Republicans are being so complacent about this?
Because they forgot. I'm of the age where I remember we had Ann Richardson all the way from top to bottom. We had Democrats.
Yeah,
and I was one of the first ones to change the seat to a Republican seat, and they said it was marvelous and I was amazing and all that. But now I'm watching it the reverse happening, and it's like there's these winds are shifting and the Republicans aren't picking up on it. I have to say though, there was someone, trying to remember who it was, I read where they're starting to say, hey, wait a minute, this is not working out. Kevin, what they used when they drew these new seats in Texas, they used Trump's numbers for Hispanics. And the thing is, it's like they built a boat dock during a flood, and now the water is going to recede, and they're going to go, wow, well, I can't get to the boat dock. So a lot of these seats, like the one I ran recently, just see what happened. It is heavily 55% Hispanic, but they said, "Oh, Trump did real well." Well, Trump's not on the ballot, so
yeah, right.
We may lose, 2-3 seats, contrary to what people believe. It's really. Go ahead.
Talk about the role of legal immigration in this, too, because I think this is one of the big things that people overlook. I mean, you have this massive Indian influx into Texas, and I know they even have some positions in the state GOP and everything else, but if you look at how they vote, generally speaking, it's just an objective fact. They tend to vote for the Democrats.
Yeah, they do. In fact, we have an area here, Tom DeLay. I don't know if many of you remember him.
I remember Tom DeLay, right, the hammer.
Yeah, right, the hammer. And I was the nail a lot of times. But he had a district which was heavily Republican, like 80-90% Republican. Now you go there, the signs, a lot of them are not even in English. They're either in Hindi or other languages. And that's the district we used to be 80-90% Republican, is now dominated, as you mentioned, from, well, they call it Asia, but it's India and Pakistan. I don't know why the British started that terminology, South Asia, which it may be, but the fact is, when people think South Asian, they think like Hong Kong, which is not really not really what we're talking about, and it's pretty alarming. But you can scream up and down and tell Republicans this, but it kind of doesn't make impact into their ears. But now there is a commitment, supposedly, that they're going to spend a lot of money in Texas. Ironically, because Paxton, they spent $100 million to try to keep John Cornyn, and they spent all this money, and had they not spent it on John Cornyn, just let the natural primary take its course, we could have used it in the fall. And they keep saying, "Oh, Paxton's going to cost so much money." Well, you already spent over it was $160 million altogether.
Yeah,
spend it in the general.
Right. Yeah, they blew so much money in the primary, and the thing is too is like, been warning and warning and warning and warning, and now the demographic consequences are coming to bear. The question becomes: is it just because the business lobby is so short-sighted, like that they don't understand that their cheap labor is going to cost them more in the long run? Or do you think it's an ideological thing where they really believe, like, no, all this immigration is going to be good for the country?
Well, there's obviously some of those in both camps, but one of the guys who leads Texas for Lawsuits Reform is a home builder, David Weekley. And home builders, I had a guy from California who was coming to a home builders meeting that I was at. I was the speaker. And he was complaining that we don't allow enough illegal immigrants to make the house. And I said, "Why'd you leave California?" He goes, "Because it's so far left, I can't build homes." I go, "Don't you understand there's a correlation? When you get this cheap labor that you want, you also get the Democrat policies." It was a total disconnect. It reminds me of the same guy that came from Canada who said, "Oh, I left Canada because I can't make any money as a surgeon." And then he comes down here and he's promoting Canadian-style medical stuff. I said, "What about your views? You're going to chase everybody out of this country by imposing." It's really bizarre. We got a lot of people, from the West Coast moving here. And there's a disconnect between, hey, you're getting punished for voting a certain way, and you keep doing it. It's just it's bizarre. And
have you ever seen anyone change their mind? Have you ever seen anyone like realize this, make this connection? I mean, this is probably the most frustrating thing. I mean, forget like the more extreme stuff that I'm into in terms of politics or whatever else, but just like normie conservative 101, where you like sit them down and say, look, these people are going to vote to take away all your stuff if you keep doing this. Here are all the figures. Here are all the numbers. There's no way to disagree with this. Do you understand? And then they go, yes, but we need it for the economy. Like they just don't, like somehow you just like can't get through to them. I mean, are they stupid? Are they greedy? Are they short-sighted? Like what's going on here? I mean, you know these people better than anyone.
Yeah, it's like Stockholm syndrome.
Right.
They come, and I noticed this actually in New Hampshire. People are fleeing Boston because of taxes and regulations. And you go to New Hampshire, those same Boston people then move to New Hampshire and vote for a Democrat. And you go, what are you doing? And you see it repeatedly. And I can't explain it. There's no correlation in their mind, cause and effect. And
right.
It's frustrating, very frustrating.
Yeah, it's incredible because, I mean, obviously the big thing that everybody has always talked about in right-wing politics is, look, once Texas goes, that's it. That's the country. Because, that's like
Obama, Kevin, Obama understood that. In, I'm trying to remember, it was 2010, Obama spent, in Harris County is where Houston is. Houston's bigger than Arkansas and a lot of the states. It has quite a few big population. People don't realize that. And so Obama spent $8 million registering Democrat voters, and the whole thing used to be Republican. It shifted to Democrat. And Obama knew that. He actually came out and said that. He said, if we shift Harris County, we shift Texas, and we shift Texas, there'll never be another Republican elected president. And he's right. If you lose Texas, you lost California, you lost Texas. The only one after that really you got is Florida, but everything else would be lost.
Why don't Texas Republican leaders understand this? Because this is the thing which I don't quite get. I always say all politics is identity politics. If you've ever done an election, you know that an election fundamentally is a kind of census. You're trying to get the constituencies that back you to come out. You're trying to get the constituencies that back the other guy to not come out. Try to, calm them down with whatever it is you're trying to do. It's not like these guys don't know. The guys who run the party, the campaign chairs and things like that, they see the numbers. They run campaigns. They want to win, presumably. So it's not like they don't see the patterns. Their whole job depends upon it. Why can't they connect the dots that in the long run, this is the death of everything?
I think there's a problem with Republicans are kind of independent. I just got back from the convention, which was just this past week. And I'm trying to eliminate, I was working at a booth to eliminate all property tax. And a Republican comes up and says, that's a great idea. However, I want to do it this way. And so it's almost like, Kevin, it's almost like herding cats. You know what I mean? Like they're all independent. They all want to get rid of government. But I have to say the Democrats, you watch them in the Senate, you watch them in the House, they march in lockstep. I mean, it's like that's why it's just like light. If you take a light and concentrate, it becomes a laser. I have to say Republicans are more diffused. It's not, there's no discipline in there. They're lacking discipline, to be honest with you. Someone needs to kind of, and Reagan did that. He kind of kept everybody disciplined, but we didn't have the avenues now we have. We have so many different platforms now we didn't have before. Back then we had like 3 TV stations. That was it,
Yeah,
a
right.
little bit of cable. So now there's so many podcasts, so many everything that the opinions diffused, and it's very hard to get Republicans to line up. I mean, it's a plus that we're all independent. We want to be entrepreneurs and everything, but there's some advantage to having discipline and ability to organize and to focus, because it's an old saying, but it's true. Divided we stand, united we fall. Divide the other way around. And so we tend to be that way. Republicans are more cerebral. Where if you talk to a Democrat, it's almost all emotional. You ask them for facts, and they go, well, he's a liar, he's a crook. Well, explain to me how that is, and they can't. And they appeal more to emotion. Where Republicans are more intellectual, but it's frustrating that you can't get them on the same page. I tried over and over again, Kevin. It's a constant struggle. to get everybody's attention focused on one thing. Even in campaigns I work on now, they all have their own ideas on how to do things, and it's very frustrating.
President Trump, you don't think has been able to do the kind of thing that President Reagan was able to do?
I honestly don't think Trump. I think Trump leads, but he doesn't. How can I say? I don't know if he coalesces the people into I don't see it on the ground level. You know what I mean? It's just like his election. He's not in this election, so we're not going to have a coalescing in organization. You know what I mean? We need to focus again on the election, and without him in there, I don't know. I think he was the glue that bind it in the last cycle. But if he's not in there, I don't know if it. Like when Reagan left, there was a lot of the mechanics were still there. If Trump leaves tomorrow, I don't think the mechanics are there, the glue to hold it together.
Where do you see it going after Trump then? I mean, especially you have to imagine that if they blow the Senate race, there's going to be some pretty serious consequences. I mean, the way that I've seen people talking about it, they just take for granted that the Republicans are going to win this Senate race, but you poll after poll after poll after poll, they're behind.
Yeah, in fact, if you look at Hillary Clinton, every poll showed her ahead, and she took it for granted. And I told people, right. So we're being like Hillary Clinton. We think we're so sure of ourselves in Texas. We're Texas, we're going to win. And it's like, no, it hasn't been like this forever. It's relatively a short time. It's 30 years. That's it. The rest of the time has been Democrat control, and I think this time is a very serious problem. But now on the upside is that Paxton's run so many times in the general election. He's at least established a statewide network, and he's got some pretty good foot soldiers. But man, I don't know. I still think it's going to be a challenge because the demographic shift here, and particularly in Harris County, whereas Houston, has been dramatic. I mean, the turnout. Let's put it in context. The last time the turnout was this big in the primary was 2008. We got killed. That's when Obama spent so much money in our state. And now the turnout was 2 or 3 times the turnout in a Democrat primary as it was over Republican. That hasn't happened since 2008. So a long, long time, almost 20 years ago. So that should be a warning sign itself, is that the turnout, the enthusiasm is real high. In fact, I know the Republican convention, we were down in booths, the number of people that rented booths, and we were down on delegates. So we usually have one of the largest conventions, but it was large, but it wasn't as large as it has been in the past.
Tellerico obviously has been running. James Tellerico, it's kind of the
nut job.
I don't want to. Yeah, I know. That's kind of what I'm hinting. I was trying to be delicate here, boss. He kind of frames himself as a sort of minister or something like that, but the sort of Christianity that he's preaching is obviously this sort of very liberal post-Christianity where it's just kind of vaguely human rights. Like being a Christian means unlimited immigration and trans kids. And there's sort of this assumption among Republicans that Texas isn't going to go for that. But I mean, is that kind of social conservatism really inherent to Texas anymore? Because frankly, they said the same kind of thing about Virginia, and we all Virginia used to be the buckle of the Bible Belt, and we all know what happened in Virginia.
The buckle fell off, the pants fell down.
Yep,
we got one of the largest pagan. I don't know what to call it. It's just a god, Indian god. It's
the giant statue of the Indian thing. You're right, and that was all legal immigrants, and that was all legal immigrants. Yeah, that was not
right. And then we have one of the largest mosques they're building. And then we have 2, 3, even in my district, they're building a compound for Sharia law and all that. It's
I know the one you're talking about.
Yeah. And it's changing. And there's no, and I organized, in the 90s, I organized churches, and we told them what legally they could do, what legally they couldn't do. And we organized them. And now even the churches seem not to be in the forefront, and yet it really reminds me they're encroaching on their freedoms. And if the ministry of the Telegraphic or whatever his name is, James's philosophy becomes standard, it's alarming. I mean, he thinks Jesus was transgender, all kinds of really weird stuff. He said, And I just can't believe that the churches aren't waking up, because they're a fundamental glue and holding the Republican Party together, and yet I don't see it this time around. I don't know.
Would you? I mean, a lot of people have talked about like the MAGA movement essentially fracturing or maybe on its way out. I mean, do you see that? Do you think MAGA has fractured? Do you think that the movement is exhausted? Where do we go from here, essentially?
Well, I'm getting my good friend Kevin and me. We're going to create a new party called the Party Party.
Yeah, that's right. I mean, I can certainly do that.
The Party Party.
Well, we could bring back club. What we called it, fight the left, because we were being very delicate.
We had another word.
We had another word
that I was told I couldn't use, and it was Martin set up. His back up. He goes, Steve,
right. When did yeah, he's referring to our Days of the Leadership Institute with Morton Blackwell, but I should say for the benefit of the audience, with that, when they told Congressman Stockman he wasn't allowed to do stuff, that usually didn't stop him. So presumably presumably we could still do something. But who comes after Trump? Because you hear people saying like, well, okay, Rubio or Vance or something like that, but the demographics are shifting under people's feet. There's a lot of people in the conservative movement who seem to just not notice this. And there's this just sort of this assumption that like, well, the South is going to stay right wing. Texas is going to stay conservative. The numbers just aren't there anymore. And at a certain point, if these people continue to come here or you don't get rid of them somehow through remigration, that's it, because demographics are destiny. I mean, that's what happened at California. Used to be the bedrock of the conservative movement.
Yeah, and none other than Ronald Reagan capitulated and said, well, we're going to do this immigration one time only. And we actually, in 2013, I had my staff do a parallel to when the immigrants that Reagan brought in are allowed to come in. I did it and paired it with the Democrat victories. And it was a direct correlation. So in other words, we can, because the majority of the immigrants at that time that Reagan, illegal immigrants that Reagan made legal, became voters and changed California permanently. It's not a theory. It's actually happening. And anybody that watched the illegal immigration I came across, it was nonstop. And where Texas tried to put up barriers, the feds came in and tore the barriers down.
Right, with bulldozers and everything, yeah.
Yes, this is insane. The largest smuggler in United States history is Joe Biden and his organization. They're the ones that brought them in, and they weren't bringing in. I mean, if you saw, there was mostly male, military age males. Both we had a lot of Chinese, we had a lot of terrorist stuff. I'm surprised we haven't had terrorist acts already. I mean, it is alarming what happened. And to suggest, well, we think that they were allowed to come in here illegally, we should allow them to be removed. They said, no, you're racist for that. It's nationalistic. Right? No, I don't want Africa to be. I don't want here to be Africa, and I don't want Africa to become America. I don't want Pakistan to become America. But I certainly don't. I had a dear friend, he's a Muslim guy. He's from Pakistan. And he says, Steve, you need to learn our culture. I go, I didn't move to Pakistan. You moved here. You need to learn our culture. I'm sorry. I get so fed up with it because I'm constantly hearing from my friends from Congo, from all around the world. You need to learn our culture. I said, no. My grandfather moved here from Germany, my great-grandfather. He became an American. He learned the culture. He learned the language. My mother was forbidden to speak German in the house. He said, we're not Germans anymore. We're Americans. Where's that spirit? Where's that belief? The people that came here want to be part of the fabric, want to become Americans. Now they're burning flags, they're demonstrating, they're tearing things down. And I'm laughing. The same people who are upset over Trump building an East Wing or whatever it was, his ballroom, are the same people that approved tearing down statues. Democrats, by the way, almost all the statues were Democrats that they were tearing down. They approved that, but they're upset over Trump, and it's just so bizarre that the situation ethics we see in today, and no one bats an eye at it. But the immigration will change America, and it's not for the better. It's not for the better, and not the way Obama did it and Biden did it.
Right. And certainly, and we can talk about where to go from there. Maybe we're in a post-conservative age, and just need to be more explicitly nationalist. I mean, obviously, that's my opinion, but the conservative movement is still a thing. That's where I worked. That's where I met you. You worked in it for everything else.
Right.
I'm always amazed at how they do seem stuck in a kind of time warp. Like they'll invoke Ronald Reagan, or they'll talk about the 1980s or something, and you'll walk around Northern Virginia, which might as well be a foreign country, and it's sort of like, do you guys hear yourself? Like, do you understand what's going on? I mean, it's sort of like people talking about Paris the way it was in 1980, and then you go to Paris today, and it's like it's not Paris anymore, as President Trump said.
Same with London. I mean, I went to London in the 80s, and it's totally changed. Well, I know I get to pejoratives yelled at me, boomer and all that stuff. And I think what we're doing is we're trying to say, even the slogan that Trump has, "Make it great again," is referring to a period of time in the United States. And what we mean by that is make it back the way it was, because that way was really profitable. It was safe. It was sane. It was logical. We knew women were women, We didn't have to worry about our daughters going into the bathroom now. I mean, it was more sane. They said, "Oh no, you want to do Jim Crow and all that?" No, there's nothing like that was back then. People forget it was the Republicans that advocated for the abolishment of slavery and stuff. But they're trying to twist everything, and that's because I believe they're using immigration. Marxists are using the immigration as a weapon, and it's an absolutely effective weapon. We watched France being taken over. I was over there, and they had to call the prayers. And what's oddly is France is almost the opposite of a lot of cities. The slums are actually outside.
Right. Yeah. The inner part is actually the good part. The outer part is the worst part. Yeah. Opposite of America.
It's kind of weird, but I was there, and they blocked the streets, man. I couldn't move. I mean, there was a lot back then, and it's even more now. It's changed. It's ironic because remember, Spain kicked the Muslims out, and now they just they allow in like 1 million.
Originally it was originally 500,000, but I saw a report just today that actually it's going to be at least 900,000.
Yep. Yeah, it's always that way too. They always underestimate. I mean, they keep saying we have 11 million illegal aliens now.
It's been 11 million for 30 years. Yeah. There's no way.
Yeah.
It's at least 40 million. I mean,
I believe you're right. Yeah, you can tell by demographic shifts when you go shopping at Walmart or Aldi's or wherever you go. All of a sudden you start seeing this. What is this? This food is not. What are grub worms? What are we supposed to do with those?
Well, I guess the question then becomes, all right, well, where do we go from here? Because there's obviously some short-term things, there's some long-term things. In terms of the short-term thing, assuming someone thought, no, we're going to do this electorally, we're going to work for the GOP or something like that, you've got the possibility of redistricting. That's already taken place, I think, in Texas and some other place. But it's not going to make a difference if Tallarico wins like the Senate race or something like that. If you were advising the people in the state GOP, one, obviously take this race seriously, which they don't seem to be doing. But how would you go about making sure the GOP wins this race?
Well, I think they not be afraid of the base. We like you and I, we're both conservative, but you have a little bit different views than I do. And if you look at the left is willing to, you'll see dykes on bikes working with, pro-abortion people, and then the communists are working with the Muslims and all that, and Antifa is working with the Muslims. So you see a correlation in organization like that, where a lot of our guys say, well, we don't necessarily want to work with the gun guys. We don't want to work with the homeschoolers. We don't want to work with the GOPers. We don't want to work with boomers and all that stuff. And we got to get past that and organize to blunt the front that's coming at us. It's a tidal wave. I don't know if people realize it, but under Biden, he was going to build an FBI building at 17 stories tall on 4 acres. That's huge. And that's not for bank robberies. It's for what what I went through. I think I'm just the tip of the spear. If they get back in power, it's going to be persecution of everybody, including you and me. I'm sure we're on the list.
Oh, sure.
Yeah, I'll share my cell with you. I say, hey, Sally.
Yeah, right. Yeah, you laugh. I'm not. I know it's coming. Well, I suppose we should get it. Yeah, right. I suppose we can get into that if you want, about what happened to you and then how President Trump commuted it.
Yeah, commuted didn't pardon me. I still
didn't pardon.
No. I had to go through probation. I was threatened all the time. I started giving presentations on what happened to me. And they pulled me in the probation office and said, you keep this up, we're going to throw you back in prison. So, they're very authoritarian. I don't look at it as left, right anymore. I look at who's authoritarian, who's not authoritarian. The more freedom you have, the better the economy is, the more I enjoy it. The less freedom you have, the worse it is for society. And a lot of times they call, Nazis and the socialists are two different things, but they're both, both in their name and practice are socialist and in their practice and in their name. So I look at it as authoritarian and versus freedom, and I'm more for freedom. I don't want government in. That's one reason why I supported crypto. And I gave a speech in 2013 at Chicago's Bitcoin convention, which, by the way, was very small at that time. It was a bunch of mainly nerds,
probably some pretty rich nerds now. I kind of regret them.
Yes. Yeah, they are, very. In fact, they got homes I know in Zog, Switzerland, and Portugal, and all over. They have. I was getting paid. The government took most of my currency and all that, but I was getting paid pretty good coinage from crypto people to speak about it. Because I introduced the first bills. But back then, it wasn't worth that much money. It's like $100 a coin. It was pretty cheap.
Well, but that wasn't why they went after you. I mean, what was the whole thing? Because Cornyn. I mean, it was basically after you challenged Cornyn in that primary, right?
Well, no, it was even before that. People don't realize this is that, and I can talk about it now, but it only appeared in Newsweek, I think, and then also briefly on Megyn Kelly's show. But Hillary Clinton was Secretary of State at that time, excuse me, and she was selling steel to Iran to make for centrifuges. And if anybody doesn't know what that is, the centrifuges makes the uranium, makes it into a bomb. So she actually participated in something which is quite frankly treasonous, and she sold it to Iran and bypassed a lot of our laws. And I exposed that. I also called the first one to call for Obama's impeachment. I also kept, you kind of find this humorous, I kept an Obama fail meter out in front of my office. And every time Obama screwed up, I put the meter up higher. And in fact, John Boehner at that time says, you need to take that down. The president doesn't like that on your wall. I mean, so Obama's very thin-skinned. And that's when a person who I didn't know his name at that time or anything about him, but his name was Jack Smith, got sent after me, and they did 4 grand juries, which people don't know this. They can keep going grand jury until they indict you. And they had 4 grand juries and spent $22 million. And if I was guilty, it wouldn't take 4 grand juries, to indict me. It'd be, pretty up and down.
The same guy who went after Trump, right?
Yeah, same guy. Yeah. And I also went after another guy who I asked you guys to help get out. He's in prison right now. Senator John Woods. He was the only one in Arkansas to endorse Trump, and Hillary Clinton got real upset. Also sick Jack Smith on him. He got 18 years, and he got money for a Christian school, and the Christian school did a fundraiser. And so they said, well, that's bribery because the Christian school did a fundraiser for you. And then the FBI agent, there's defendthepatriot.com. If you go to there, you can see both mine. It's not a real high-tech website. You have to click on it and stuff to get the stuff. But the FBI agent admitted he destroyed 64 megabytes of information to convict John. The FBI agent got convicted of a felony for doing that. He gets probation, but John's still in prison. John's falsely in prison. It's horrible. And sometime we can do a lengthy show on it, but it's really criminal. But there's a lot of people in prison because of Jack Smith that are political prisoners to this day. And I think it's pretty rich when I hear Gavin Newsom saying, well, they're going after my wife because of politics. It's been like that for a long time.
Yeah, welcome to the party. I mean, like just about everybody I know has had the government go after him at some point or another. And so we had Rob Rundo on this show, and of course, my audience knows Rob Rundo and the active clubs and everything like that. Know that the FBI was chasing him in different countries because of a fight, literally a fist fight with Antifa, and that somehow led to this sprawling prosecution that went on for years and years and years. I mean, I don't think leftists could put up with a week like what we put up with. What we go through in a week is more than they put up with in a lifetime. They have no idea. The most wimpy college Republican goes through more than any national Democratic politician goes through in his entire life. And this is something that I think everybody on our side recognizes at some level.
There was a gay guy who said it was harder coming out Republican and conservative than it was coming out gay. He said, I got really treated bad. And you see that repeatedly. There's a Chris Plant, a talk show host out of Washington, D.C., who was a CNN reporter, and he got all kinds of awards and everything. And also John Stossel got all kinds of awards. When both of them flipped sides, they were hated and maligned and attacked. It's like they just came around to the truth, and the truth ended up getting them in trouble. You're right. I don't think the left could hold on at all.
Well, here's the thing, though. I mean, as we've kind of talked about a little bit, and I know with some of the things that you've said about authoritarianism or beyond right and left and this sort of thing, but it is fundamentally a demographic situation that we're facing because, I mean, we can talk about, well, the Constitution, freedom, limited government, all these sorts of things. But frankly, to the people coming in now, like, these are not even concepts. Like, they don't even relate to these things. I mean, for them, it's simply in-group, out-group. And if there's enough of them, they're going to basically dictate terms because they vote as a group while we're over here discussing the Constitution or whatever else. So is there any awareness among conservatives, or at least within the Texas GOP, that this is an existential threat, and whatever people's philosophies or whatever else, we can talk about it later? But I mean, unless we stop this, I mean, what difference does the Constitution
Kevin,
make?
you know this. The Republicans are gun shy because of the very fact they see me and how I got prosecuted. They see how the press treated me. So that for them, they're kind of like, wow, I don't want to go in that bailiwick.
They went after you hard. I mean, maybe this is something the audience doesn't know. I mean, I was about to tell a story, but I'm not sure I can tell that story. But what they did to you, I mean, do you think it was basically, look, we did it to this guy, this is an example for the rest of you? Deliberately.
100%. Yeah, 100%. They wanted to send out a warning. They wanted to make sure I paid for it, too. In fact, some of the things that happened to me in prison, I was there for almost 3 years till President Trump commuted my sentence, thanks to Patty and prayer and everything. But what they did is, at one time they put me on, obviously older, and they were moving. Texas, as you know, gets pretty hot in the summertime. So it was the summertime, and they put me out there working with these 20-year-olds trying to move these bags. And I would have probably had a heart attack if I didn't say, I'm not going to do this. I just can't physically do it. And they were putting me out there. When I got COVID, and they refused to take me to the hospital. I was having a hard time breathing and all this, and I turned out a double pneumonia. Then they wouldn't give me the medication. They took away my medication from me. And then they tried to give me a syringe full of concentrated insulin for diabetes, which I said, I said, what are you guys doing? Trying to give that to me. So even after, because the DOJ, the Department of Justice, is run by the Democrats, and it's like having NPR run the Department of Justice. I mean, they're all leftists. They also run the Bureau of Prisons. So once you're convicted, they still can go after you. And one of the counselors there told me, somebody up in D.C. really hates you, and we were told never to let you out and to give you the hardest time as possible. And they did that. And so I went through a lot of stuff we don't have to get into right now, but they really put the number on me, and it's unfortunate. But I'm alarmed because if we ever lose, I don't think people realize, Republicans are realizing, actually anybody realize how close we are to authoritarian government. When you actually had Obama and Biden proposing a 17-story FBI building on 4 acres, that's a police state. That's not used for bank robberies and things that you normally think the FBI would be involved in. They took, when they were going after the J6ers, they took all these people who are doing investigations. They took them all. I know you and I both have friends at J6ers. They took all these investigators and put them on doing nothing but prosecuting J6ers. And it was vengeance. It was hateful. I mean, everything about it, the judges, the way that they communicated to the witnesses and the way they communicated to defendants, it wasn't about justice. It was about hatred on their part. They truly are filled with hate. And if we ever lose, I don't know if we can come back from it, because if they end up getting their way, there's going to be a lot of people, look at me and say, go, oh, thank God it's not me. I'm thinking, no, you could be next. I told our joint friend, O'Keefe, when it was happening to me, I said, James, I said, he goes, well, I have former FBI agents and lawyers. They're never going to touch me. I go, James, it doesn't matter what you have. You're not as big as the government. And he poo-pooed me. But then obviously it turned out that they went after him too.
Yeah.
For something really stupid, for a diary, which was left behind. It wasn't stolen, it was left behind.
Yeah, right.
And
so it's kind of, I mean, these days with us, I mean, you're reading the paper, it's like, which one of my friends is getting trouble with the courts today? Well, my day will come soon. I have no doubt.
No, I got a T-shirt for you. It was made by my wife, Patty. It said, if you're not indicted or being investigated by the FBI, try harder.
Yeah, any day now. I mean, this is one of the things. Do you think that that's changed? I mean, you got Kash Patel in there now. There were some people who were saying, I think Orrin McIntyre was saying this, why not just scrap it? Why not just scrap the FBI? Why not just scrap the agency? Because the agency ultimately is unreformable. But others would say, no, this is kind of defeatist thinking because, look, if you have an institution, it's going to be used for power. Like you either wield power. I mean, I suppose this is one of the differences between us in the sense that I'm a bit more of a statist, willing to use state power. If you have an institution, you got to use it, or it's just going to be used against you. If you get rid of it, they're just going to bring it back. But then again, the counter argument to that would be it's inherently corrupt. It's inherently leftist. It's inherently going to be used against us. There's no way you can weaponize it against the left. I mean, certainly Kash Patel and what the FBI has been doing so far, they're not going after our friends, so to speak, the way they used to, but I mean, I think a lot of people were expecting a lot more in terms of a crackdown on Antifa. I mean, we have gotten that one conviction in Texas. I don't overlook that. That was a big deal. That was the first time that it happened, in fact, where you had people getting convicted of providing material support to terrorism in an Antifa case. But that's one case. I mean, what do you think should be done with the FBI?
Well, I have to tell you, they found the bill I was drafting on my computer of abolishing the FBI. So.
Yeah, I'm sure they love that.
Probably didn't win any friends there at the FBI because I go back to some of the things they did under Clinton, which was pretty horrific. They shot Randy Weaver and some other people that weren't very good in what happened. But
I mean, that was one of the winning things that really built your reputation initially was like standing up against federal law enforcement and some of its excesses back in the 90s. I mean, I think a lot of people forget that, like, what it was like, especially in the early 90s, in terms of the sort of grassroots resistance to the federal government and how popular that was in the South and the West.
Yeah, I was even though hated by my own party, Bush, President Bush called me I sounded like a Democrat, because I introduced the first bill to stop, we called it anchor babies back then, but now it's called birthright citizenship. I introduced the first bill for that 32 years ago. And I did other things that they said were racist, but it wasn't. It was me watching demographics shift even back then, saying this is a train coming down the tracks. This is not a good train. This is not something we want. And it's always funny because I just heard on NPR, which I do listen to that. Someone has to listen to enemy radio. Is that they said because if we don't get immigration, we're not going to have Social Security. And they do this whole economic study about how immigrations help Social Security. And I said, well, wait a minute. Why don't you do that with abortion? How many people we kill with abortion? You never saw a study about, we killed 30 million kids. That would be more than enough to supplant all the illegal immigration we had. Is if we stopped abortion, and they don't ever cover that. They just think about how they're putting out this stuff, how immigration's great, immigrants do less crime. The distortion in that is they're talking about immigrants. They're not talking about illegal immigration because the minute you cross the border, you're breaking the law. You can't say, well, and then they say, well, it's not really a federal crime. Yes, it is. It is.
That's one of the biggest lies. Yeah, civil.
Yeah, it's a civil. Yeah, it's like, no, it's not civil. It's against the law. It's a federal crime. But that's the word speak, the Orwellian discussions we have. It's so frustrating because you can't. When you talk with a liberal, you can't. There's no rational discussion with them. It's really frustrating. It drives me nuts. But anyhow, to answer your question, I would like to see everybody somehow we could coalesce and start getting all our friends together and organizing because I think there's more people now. In the 90s when I first started doing some of this stuff, and you're more on the cutting edge than I am, but when I first started doing this stuff, I was pretty much alone by myself. So in some ways, I'm encouraged. I see more and more people. What's happening in Europe now? They're finally starting to wake up. But I have friends in Belgium. He said, "Steve, there's nothing we can do in Belgium." He goes, "It's completely lost."
Belgium's a tough case, and I think one thing that a lot of Americans don't understand is when you talk about like kind of left authoritarianism. I mean, just straight up being sent to jail for saying truthful things, which even the court does not dispute, is truthful. Like truth is no defense. I mean, we're actually at that point in a liberal democracy in the West.
Well, you had the BBC. This was a reference to vetting the immigrants that are coming here for soccer or football. They're coming here, and FBI was using social media to check to see, we don't want Antifa and terrorists to come in here, and so the BBC was attacking America for checking social media. The same country has the number one arrest for people posting on social media is attacking America for using. So I mean, I was like, this is strange. The BBC is criticizing us for what they're doing in spades. I saw a clip where they took a 5-year-old kid away from his dad because he posted something on the internet, and they said all these are going to be banned for under 16, except for
the blue sky.
Yeah, everything else is bad, but except for the Democrat socialists, that's okay.
That really gave it away. They banned all social media for under 16, except the left wing social media site, which of course is also notorious for grooming certain things. But we'll leave that aside for the moment. I think Discord might also not be banned too, although we'll wait and see. But yeah, I mean, we are entering a kind of there's a writer out there who refers to this phenomenon as the long night, this idea that essentially, I think it's John Robb, who essentially says that you actually can control the information environment more or less completely with certain bans, with controlling media from the top down. And obviously Biden did that during COVID, where you had the federal government even calling social media companies and saying this person specifically, kick them off. This person specifically, get rid of their ability to use financial institutions and this sort of thing. And there's no reason to think that we won't just go back to that if the Democrats retake the White House or anything like that. So then the question becomes, if you had a line to President Trump, would you tell him, look, you're not even going to be able to use the FBI and it's going to be used against your guys later, or maybe against you again once you're out of office? Get rid of it while you can.
No, I think he should. But that's my opinion. I think I'm probably alone in that philosophy, and I don't know if
not alone. I know a lot of other people who have been saying the same thing. So you're definitely not alone.
I don't think the DOJ should be as powerful as it is. In fact, there's many people that called for turn some of that power back over to the states. It doesn't belong in that much power. The Department of Justice, it's gotten grown so big and so dangerous. I'm not sure that that's a wise choice either to keep them around. I think it may be better back in the States. But I really find it interesting the direction we're going, and it's unfortunately I see our side fracturing too much. It's exact opposite what we should be doing. You got. Everybody's fracturing on our side, and we need to do exact opposite. And I wish there was something we could do where, okay, we disagree on these issues, but we got to work together because the other side's working together. I watched the Democrat Party, which when the 90s was there, they had what called blue dog Democrats.
Yep.
Which were with us on guns, on abortion, a bunch of stuff they were with us on. They're no longer there. And now they're even taking out the pro-choice Democrats. Unless you're an ardent communist, they want to take you out. So why can't we do that in the Republican Party? Start taking out the guys that are moderate Republicans and putting in harder core people, but still organize and get together, because we're Kevin. I think we're in deep pudding, because I've watched this over the time frame over my lifetime, and obviously I'm older and I'm looking at it now and say it really is. Everybody's acclimating. And in some of those clips, if you look back at some of the clips in the 70s and stuff, I was laughing because we didn't have helmets on our hats or riding bicycles. We can't come in whenever you want after dark and all this stuff. And it's changed so much in so many ways that it's alarming. And I don't know. Once the culture's changed, I don't know how you can put the toothpaste back in the tube. But we got to try at least.
Well, there is some. Go ahead.
No,
I was going to say,
one of my,
you go first.
Well, no, I just said, one of my friends said, Steve, it was just yesterday. In fact, he goes, Steve, it's all lost. He goes, he said, I'm throwing my hands up.
The dismal tide, right? The dismal tide. Well, I mean, the counter, of course, to this, and I know I'm always accused of blackpilling, but I mean, when you look at especially young people on the right, I mean, they are significantly more radical than I think older conservatives at this point. And they're willing to go farther, and they're willing to entertain solutions that I think conservatives would be unwilling to entertain. I mean, for one thing, if you said something like, I mean, to just be blunt about it, if you talked about like the immigration thing and you say, well, there's this demographic change, and somebody said, well, they're citizens and they came in legally, my response would be, I don't care. They're not American. They leave. And it's not a question of the law because the law is not even a thing anymore.
Kevin,
you're not going to get a lot of older conservatives to say that, but I know a lot of people under 30 who would say that.
But here's how we can, the way I did a lot of stuff and frame stuff, it's like, I want to do a bill called the Ellis Island bill. I don't think people understand what happened during Ellis Island. By the way, Biden let in more people than Ellis Island did the entire time it was in existence. Do you understand? That's an amazing statistic. But if you use the rules of Ellis Island, you would have a dramatic change. You couldn't come here and get on welfare. That was, if you did, you got kicked out.
That alone would be huge.
You couldn't come here if you're a communist. You got kicked out.
That's also still on the books.
Yeah.
Still in the books, right?
Well, they should. They should keep it. We should enforce it. And if you came here and lied, you got kicked out. And there's so many people here that come here and lied. In the Somali community, by the way, the worst of the worst. My friends, I have friends in UAE who are Muslims. They said, we don't want them in our country, and you're taking them in your country. He goes, are you guys crazy? He goes, these guys are nuts. These Somalis are nuts, and you're letting them in your country. He goes, it makes no sense. And the people forget there was a movie called Black Hawk Down. That's Somalia. I mean, and then the pirates that were on ships and kidnapping boats and stuff, that's Somalia. And so we're going like, hey, I got a great idea. Those are the people we want to come to our country. Other people are they're hijacked and kidnapping and terrorizing people. Man, that's just who we want. And then they come here and we're like, oh my God. They're acting like terrorists. They're stealing from our government, and they're here falsely. I think it's 80% of people in Minnesota there, Somalians, are here on forged documents. And well, we can't do anything about it. We can't, we're afraid to do anything about it. No, we have principles. We don't have people running stop signs. We don't have people running through and breaking all the laws all the time. And we need to hold them accountable, and we're not. We need to hold the immigration accountable. The people that are here illegally and fill out false documents and have come here in a shameful way, they need to go.
Yeah, and you bring up an excellent point that the laws are on the books to get rid of them. You actually wouldn't need new laws. I mean, you can denaturalize somebody for lying. Even something like the oath they take, you could like sneer and be like, well, taking an oath doesn't make someone an American. I would agree with that. But part of that oath is you have to abjure your loyalty to any foreign prince or potentate or any foreign country or any of these sorts of things. I mean, you've got Ilhan Omar on camera saying like Somalia is my country and all this kind of thing. Like that should be enough. And that's without getting into some of the other accusations about who she may have married and that kind of thing to get into the country.
Well, even her father is the reason we're allowing Somalians in, because her father was persecuting people. And then he changed his name and she changed her name and they're allowed to come over here. And it's like saying, the terrorist is my dad and I have to flee the terrorist. And then they leave the person that's instituting it. It's bizarre. It's like the guy who kills his parents and throws his mercy on the court that he's an orphan, I'm an orphan.
Right. Yeah, that's pretty much what happened. Yeah. Well, I guess the question then becomes this. Obviously, it's a desperate situation, and I think Texas is closer to the brink than a lot of people expect. I mean, if I had to bet right now, I frankly, I probably would bet on Tellerico just looking at the polls and everything else, but you know the situation better than I do. Is there any hope for recovery? Because there are a lot of promising things happening nationally. There are a lot of movements springing up. I do have a lot of optimism, but the hard reality is if you're talking about national politics, you can't lose Texas. And right now, it does seem like Texas is on the brink of going to California. Do you see any resistance to this? Because what I'm always amazed at, frankly, and you alluded to it before, is how many people leave California. Joe Rogan, I guess, would be a great example of it. Leave California saying, oh, this used to be such a great place. And then they destroyed it. And then they come to Texas, especially around Austin. And then they support the very same policies that they're fleeing from.
No, it's bizarre. It's really bizarre. There's no understanding of correlation. It's really bizarre. And the thing is that you and I both always talk to the left and the right, and the conservatives and the liberals. And I was on a plane one time talking to this very high up person in the Clinton administration. I said, "What policies did that Hillary did? She was Secretary of State at that time. Did she do that you like?" He goes, "Oh, I watched The West Wing, and I really want to be in a movie like that." And I'm like, man, this is really bad for our country. We lost our morals bearings to such a degree that he can't articulate his rationale except for he saw it on a TV show. And it's alarming that uneducated people on a lot of stuff. My dad fought World War II, and they don't even know what year the World War II was fought or what. It's bizarre. I mean, the lack of knowledge of our history or what our founding fathers went through that made this country. They're a bunch of white racists. No, they sacrificed. A lot of these guys lost their fortunes. They've really sacrificed a great deal, and there's a lack of knowledge of all that. And my father sacrificed too. So, yeah, and a lot of other people have sacrificed for this freedom. And once the freedom's gone, we can't really get it back.
What would you say if you had one thing that you could say to President Trump for something that he could do nationally right now? What would that be?
Don't count the illegals as citizens.
Oh, in the census, you mean?
Right.
Yeah, that would make a huge difference. Yeah.
It would give us, in Texas alone, probably an additional 5 seats. All the southern states would be getting more congressional seats. That would change the presidential math. The way you count for presidents is really by the number of congressmen. It would change that. It would change even the benefits. You couldn't, as a state of California, benefits from illegal immigration because we pay for every person in the state, regardless of their citizenship. So it'd take away the financial incentives, because then you wouldn't. In other words, if you had 10 million people in California that were illegally there, and you cut off all that money, they can't then support them, and then they want them out.
Yeah, that's a really good point. Yeah, that's something that could be done overnight. And I guess the last question then would be, I mean, you just alluded to talking to these guys, but maybe to reemphasize the point, given the political realities right now, what would you advise the Texas GOP?
We got to get if people that voted for Cornyn and didn't vote for our candidate Paxton. We need to unify, because if we don't unify, it really bothers me. The moderates in the Republican Party are the quickest ones to throw overboard, and it's the conservatives always have to bite the bullet to vote for the moderate and the general. But it's never reverse. It always seems like the moderates say, well, you got to vote for Bush because Bush has got to win. And then when it comes up to our candidates, they say, well, no, I'm not voting for him, So we got to talk to the guys that are stubborn like that. But to answer your question, they got to pay attention. We only got 5 months to voting or less. They need an ID and turn them out. And I think that there need to be one of the things that happened to me, Kevin, is I had a Hispanic working for me, and she's a conservative woman, and she keeps getting from the Democratic Party, come work with us for $100 on election day. Well, that's buying a vote. They got to stop that stuff too. They got to stop the fraud. I don't know how they're going to do it, but they got to.
All right, Congressman Steve Stockman, thank you for everything you've done with everything. Where can people find you, and how can they support you?
Well, they can support me by supporting you, first off, because you're a great man, you're a great American, and people don't know this, but Kevin was worried about talking in public, and he didn't think he could do it.
All right, first of all, that was like 20 years ago. Like, we're not gonna do Kevin DeAnna in 2005 and his DC adventures. But
I'm praising you. You got to realize I'm praising you. I'm saying anybody can get out there. And don't think you're valuable, because it looks what happened to Kevin. He didn't think he was valuable, and he turned out to be one of the most valuable people in America. So I think it's fantastic.
This is like my dad embarrassing me over here.
Well,
but But where's your? But you're on Twitter. You're on Twitter, right?
You're right. Steve works for you with the number 4. And at one point we had almost, I guess, 900,000 people or 1 million following us, and then during my days in Congress, they stripped us. We started losing like 1,000 a day. And then they muted us. I didn't know what was going on. I go, something's not going on, man. We're not being retweeted anymore. It was during the government shutdown that I started losing. They started restricting what we were saying, and that's when the persecution started, the FBI and everything. We got shut down from that. And by the way, I'm still shadow banned apparently anyhow. But yeah, that's where they can find me. Steve works for me, or they can email me. Whatever. It's
all right.
fine.
And do you have a website just for that? What would be the email? What's the website?
Just friends of Steve Stockman at gmail.com.
All right, Congressman Stockman, thank you so much for appearing on Identity Politics.
We love you. Hang in there, man. We love you.
So we've heard this before. President Trump has repeatedly declared victory in Iran, has repeatedly told us that peace is on the way. This time seems different. At least it's serious enough that if he backs away again or this deal doesn't happen, there's going to be major ramifications. But we are told that the war in Iran is essentially over, that there's going to be a peace deal signed this week, that the Strait of Hormuz is going to be opened. Some of the specifics people are going nuts about, but this whole sad spectacle is coming to an end. Now, I haven't talked too much about it, mostly because I wanted to avoid the kind of speculation that I saw in a lot of other places. I saw a lot of people being like, oh, this is World War III. This is the fall of the American empire. We're all going to die. And you had other people saying, no, like he's going to sweep through and the Shah is going to come back and we're going to rebuild the Persian Empire, or whatever it is. Frankly, what actually ended up happening is pretty much what I always thought was going to happen, which is a bunch of missiles were launched, a bunch of people died, and really nothing of any note was accomplished. It was a total waste of time. And no, you didn't go die for Zog or anything like that, but let's not forget, a lot of Americans did die in that initial wave of missile strikes. Was this sacrifice worth it? What was gained? We have to ask ourselves, what was the point of all this? Now, obviously, there is a whole thing, and we don't even need to go why. I think we all know, if you look at Miriam Adelson or some of the donors that Trump used in 2024, there's an argument that the only reason President Trump is even in power is because they wanted this to happen, is because the Iran operation was the reason they let him be put back in. And that was the whole point. This is also why Barry Weiss took over CBS, and now apparently she's taken over CNN. I think Nick Fuentes did a whole big breakdown on that. But the big thing I have to ask is, like, is this it? Like, if that much power and money and everything else was mobilized so you could launch like some missiles at Iran and then nothing happens, and then you have a settlement that kind of sort of maybe strengthens Israel, but not really, because the big feeling in Israel right now apparently is betrayal. And guys like Mark Levin, who, of course, were singing Trump's praises to the skies a few weeks ago, and Trump, of course, was returning the favor, is also now accusing President Trump of betrayal. And all these neoconservatives, who, of course, didn't help President Trump at all when it came to issues like immigration, but were calling him the reincarnation of Cyrus the Great, now, all of a sudden, they're turning on him again. A couple lessons from all this. One, there's been this whole narrative that, like, say what you will about the neoconservatives, but they know how to play politics, right? They stay in power. They're like a tick. They just stay in power forever, regardless of who the administration is and everything else. But here's the thing. They're not good political allies. They don't actually support you. They don't support you on your issues. They demand your support on their issues. And then if you back away from it even a little bit out of practicality, they don't help you. So what's the point of kissing up to these people? What's the point of working with these people at all? They deliver nothing. And of course, just in terms of raw political popularity, their day is done. As far as the neoconservative foreign policy agenda, both parties hate it at this point. Insofar as there's still a constituency on the right, it's basically older voters, so it's going to go away in 10 years anyway. So that's one. Two, this thing was basically a distraction from the issues that really matter. The issue that matter is there is a war for America's survival, but it's being fought at home. It's not about the Middle East. It's not even about Asia. It's not even about Europe fundamentally, because the most good that we can do is here where we are. And we have to save this place first as Americans before we can start talking about Europe. Instead, you have all this kind of talk about, oh, we're going to intervene here, we're going to do this, we're going to do everything else. None of it's going to matter unless we reverse the demographic decline here. And instead, we're kind of goofing off in the Middle East. And I use the term goofing off deliberately because I know people are saying, well, you don't understand. America is being used as a vehicle to intervene in the Middle East because that's the primary interest of the people who are running America. If that's true, was this it? Seriously? I mean, if you had total control over America and you were fundamentally committed to destroying the Iranian regime, is this all you would do? It's not a very impressive effort. It was just a bunch of missile strikes and airstrikes. I think this is one of those cases where it's more stupidity and half-heartedness and going along with a political agenda and not really thinking through the consequences than the last step of a nefarious plan. Because if this is the last step of the nefarious plan, it's not a very good plan. Third thing is we have to be honest about this. This was a catastrophe. This was a political catastrophe, and we all knew it. This was the one thing that President Trump just had to avoid at all costs: direct military action against Iran. We all knew that if that happened, that was going to be a political catastrophe, and it was. Fundamentally, because it increased gas prices, it increased inflation, it made the problem of affordability much worse. And if you look at the midterm elections, the number one issue for everybody, it's not foreign policy, it's not Palestine, it's not even immigration, it's not any of the things that we all spend our time talking about. It's affordability, it's inflation, it's the economy. And that's why Iran was such a disaster politically. Now, in terms of the broader takeaway, I think that there may be something positive coming out of all this. I think we all kind of know that the problem with the American right is it's essentially been taken over by a kind of parasite for decades, and that has led us into stupid policy choices for a very long time that sabotage our ability to work on more important issues. And a lot of people have said, well, we can cut a deal. If we give them this, we get to have progress on these other things. This was especially prominent during the Trump administration. Well, it turns out it doesn't work that way. It turns out that you give them at least some of what they want, but you don't get anything you want. But now the situation may be reversing a little bit. The way the neoconservatives are now turning on Trump, not for not doing what they wanted, but not doing enough. I mean, he didn't do nothing, but apparently he's still a traitor because he didn't launch a ground invasion of Tehran or something like that. And I think there may be an opportunity here. I think there may be an opportunity to finally expel the parasite so that the American right can finally start working in the interests of the American people. This was a political catastrophe, but it could have been much, much worse. And I know this is damning with faint praise, but I am grateful that President Trump did not go farther in launching a ground invasion, which I know he was facing a lot of pressure to do, and which a lot of people predicted that he would do. Let's hope this peace deal holds. Let's hope that this is the end of these neoconservative foreign policy adventures for foreign interests. Let's hope that we can finally expel this parasite which has run our country into the ground. And let's hope, finally, we can have an American right that puts America first. I'm Kevin DeAnna. We'll talk again real soon. All right, guys, that's it for today's episode of Identity Politics. If you found this valuable and you want to see more of this kind of work, here's how you can help. First, follow the show and share it with people who need to hear it. We're on Rumble, Odyssey, YouTube, X, TikTok, and you can also grab the RSS feed. Sharing it is the fastest way for us to grow. Second, sign up for our email list so we can always stay in direct contact no matter what the platforms decide. And most importantly, if you believe in our mission and want to keep it going, please consider supporting us on Ko-Fi. You can donate once or subscribe at the bronze, silver, gold, or white level. Every contribution, big or small, helps keep Identity Politics independent and alive. All the links are in the description below. Thanks for watching. Thanks for supporting. We'll see you next time.